The Myth of Atrahasis. Part 1. In the beginning of time, when the world was still young, the gods lived much like ordinary people. There was not yet that great distance which would later separate the divine from mankind. They carried heavy baskets, dug canals, carved out rivers, and mixed clay in the marshes. Their labor was harsh, almost humiliating for beings who considered themselves rulers of the universe. The higher Anunnaki, the 7 great gods, divided power among themselves so that all burdens fell upon the lesser gods, the Igigi. Anu became ruler of the heavens. Enlil, as counselor and warrior, received dominion over the earth. Enki descended into the subterranean waters, becoming guardian of the Abzu, entrusted with the keys to the underground waters and the gates of the cosmic oceans. Having decided the fate of creation, the elder gods withdrew, leaving the younger gods to perform all the difficult labor. For ages, the Igigi dug. They carved the canals from which the Tigris and Euphrates were born. They built Enki's dwelling in the watery depths. They raised the Abzu itself, the sacred underground waters. Their toil lasted not a decade, nor a century, but millennia. 2,500 years of endless, exhausting labor. And one day, their patience was exhausted. Worn down and filled with anger, they raised their voices in the pits where they worked. Night after night they gathered, until murmuring became shouting. They demanded to see the overseer, the one who had assigned them this unbearable labor. Over them stood Ninurta, and as taskmaster there was Ennugi. Yet all authority came from one god alone, Enlil, warrior and counselor, the ancient ruler over all the earth. The Igigi decided to go to him. Their leader spoke words that for the first time shook the balance of the gods. Enlil has been appointed unjustly. His time has passed, and he must be replaced. It was a rebellion, not symbolic, but entirely real. The Igigi burned their shovels, baskets, and tools, rejecting the very symbols of their servitude. Hand in hand, as though binding themselves in an oath, they marched toward the gates of Ekur, the sacred temple of Enlil. They came at night, in the middle watch, when Ekur was surrounded by crowds of gods, though Enlil himself still knew nothing. The first to sense danger was Kalkal. He looked outside, saw the flames, and heard the uproar. He awakened Nusku, Enlil's personal counselor, and together they realized this was not the revolt of a few, but the uprising of the entire lower divine class. Nusku hurried to his lord. Enlil awoke in alarm. For the first time, the warrior god felt fear. Nusku tried to calm him. "Why do you fear your own sons?" For the Igigi were children of the same heavens as Enlil, though lesser than he. "Bar the gates," Enlil commanded, anxiety clear in his voice. "Take up weapons, summon Anu and Enki. Let heaven and the abyss decide whether the present order shall fall or whether the world will drown in the blood of the gods." The messenger soared to the heavens, and Anu descended to Enlil to learn that the younger gods had declared war upon the elder gods. And the great Anunnaki assembled and took their seats before Enlil. Anu, the lord of the heavens, and Enki, the lord of the Abzu. Then Enlil arose and said, "All of you know what has come to pass. Should I not strike them down with my weapons? For battle itself has come to my very gates." And Anu answered him, "For what reason have the Igigi surrounded your Ekur? Send Nusku, that he may investigate and learn why they have come here." Then Enlil commanded Nusku, "Nusku, clothe yourself in armor and take up your weapons. Open the gates and stand before the council of the great gods. Bow before them and deliver our words to the Igigi. Your father Anu has sent me. Your counselor and warrior Enlil has sent me. Your overseer Ninurta and your superintendent Ennugi have sent me. Who is your spokesman and your instigator? Who is the author of this rebellion? Who called you to this assault and urged you into battle?" And the Igigi heard the words of Nusku, and with one voice they answered, "We all declare war as one. We have been condemned to exhausting and unbearable labor. For ages we have dug canals and excavated great pits. The crushing burden is destroying us. Our toil is grievous, and our suffering is great. Now we, the Igigi gods, have come to Enlil to say, 'Enough! We will no longer bear this yoke.'" So Nosku returned to the council of the Anunnaki and delivered the answer of the Igigi. When Enlil heard these words, tears filled his eyes, and he spoke to Anu. "O noble father, establish your decree in heaven and reveal your might. Put to death those who have dared to rise against us." But Anu replied, "Why should we be angry with them? Do you not see how heavy their labor is and how great their hardships? Day after day they toil by the sweat of their brow, carrying baskets and digging canals. Their cries and lamentations are so loud that even I hear them from the heavens. Therefore, this is what I propose. Let the great Anunnaki take their seats before you. Let Beletili, the mother of the gods, be summoned, that she may create mankind in our image and likeness. Let the burden of the Igigi be laid upon mankind. Let man bear the yoke of the gods. Let him carry the baskets, dig the canals, and perform all the arduous labor that the Igigi have borne until this day." So they summoned the mother, the wise Mami, and said to her, "O great mother, create mankind, that he may bear the burden of the Igigi gods. Let him take upon himself the labors decreed by Enlil. Let him carry the baskets and dig the canals." And Mami answered them, "I cannot create him alone. Only with the help of Enki can I accomplish this work, for he alone knows the mysteries of the depths of the Abzu. Let him provide me with clay, and I shall fulfill your desire." Then Enki spoke to the gods. "In the first month, on the 7th day, and on the 15th day, I shall perform the rite of purification. Let one of the Igigi offer himself in sacrifice, that Mintu may mingle his flesh and blood with the clay. Thus shall the divine be joined with the earthly in a single creation. Let the beating of his heart be heard forever. Let understanding abide within this flesh, and let mankind remember the purpose for which he was created." When he had finished speaking, the entire assembly cried out with one voice, "So let it be." And the great Anunnaki did according to his word. In the first month, on the 7th day, and on the 15th day, Enki performed the rite of purification. Then, in the midst of the assembly, one of the Igigi, endowed with wisdom, was put to death. From his blood and flesh, Nintu kneaded the clay, while the Anunnaki assisted her in the work. And Mami said, "You commanded, and I have accomplished it. You have sacrificed a god and his wisdom. From this day forward, mankind shall bear the burden once carried by the Igigi. Upon him shall fall toil and hardship. Your yoke has been lifted, and freedom has been granted to you." And when the gods heard these words, they fell at her feet, saying, "Formerly we called you Mother, now your name shall be Lady of the Gods." Afterward, Enki and the wise Mami went to the House of Destinies. There the birth goddesses assembled with them to begin the creation of mankind. The goddesses kneaded the clay, while Enki pinched off pieces of it and handed them to Mami. She, in turn, recited the sacred incantations. When she had finished speaking the words of power, she took 14 lumps of clay. 7 she placed on the right and 7 on the left, and between them she set a brick. Then the birth goddesses gathered together, 7 and 7. They fashioned 7 men and 7 women. Mami joined them together in pairs and said, "Let the brick remain in the house of birth for 7 days. Let mankind praise the wise lady Mami forever and ever. Let the midwife rejoice in the birthing house. When a woman is delivered of her child and the infant comes into the light, let its umbilical cord be cut. Let the man desire the maiden, and the maiden the man. Let the woman's breasts grow full, and the man's beard appear. Let husband and wife be joined together upon their marriage bed and bring forth offspring. Let the race of mankind multiply throughout all the earth." Such was the destiny Mami ordained for humankind, and when the appointed time had passed, after 9 months, the womb of the woman in labor was opened, and the first child was born. Mami rejoiced. She girded her loins, blessed the birth, scattered flour upon the ground, and set the brick in place. Then she took the infant into her arms and said, "Behold my creation. My own hands have fashioned him. From this day forward, whenever a child is born, let the midwife enter the house of the woman in labor. For 9 days let the brick lie beside her bed. Let the sisters invoke the primordial mother Nintu and the goddess Mami, and let them give praise to her. And when a husband lies with his wife, let them remain united in their marriage. Let Ishtar rejoice in the house of the bridegroom's father, and let the celebration continue for 9 days. Let destinies be fulfilled at their appointed time." Thus the Anunnaki settled their dispute with the Igigi, and mankind took upon itself the burden that had once been borne by the younger gods. Mankind multiplied and filled the earth. They kept their homes and the streets of their cities in good order. A son was the strength of his father. Each labored, and his hands grew calloused from hard work. With pick and spade, they built temples, dug canals, and obtained food for themselves and for the gods. But 1,200 years passed, and the earth became filled with people. Like a wild bull the land bellowed. The clamor of mankind rose to the heavens and reached the ears of the great Enlil. Then Enlil said to the gods who stood before him, "Mankind has become too numerous, and their noise gives me no rest. I can no longer find peace amid this uproar. Let Namtar reduce their numbers. Let him pass among them like a storm, and strike them with pestilence, disease, plague, and sores." And by the word of Enlil, plague came upon the earth. The Lord Namtar passed among mankind like a whirlwind. With disease, pestilence, plague, and sores, he struck humanity, and the ranks of men grew fewer. But in those days there lived the wisest of men, Atra-Ḥasīs, who was instructed by Enki himself. And he spoke to his god, "My lord, humanity groans. Sickness devours the earth. Men perish one after another. Truly, it was you who created us. Therefore tell me, how long shall we suffer? Are disease and death appointed to us forever?" And Enki answered him, "Gather the elders before your gates and say to them, you have not honored your gods, nor offered prayers to your goddesses. Therefore go to the gates of Namtar. Bring before him baked loaves of bread and set them in his presence. Present an offering of sesame flour, and when he sees your gifts, his heart will be softened, and he will withhold his hand. Thus shall you speak to the elders of the people." And Atra-Ḥasīs obeyed the words of Enki. He gathered the elders and told them everything the god had commanded. And the elders did exactly as they had been instructed. Namtar accepted their offerings and withheld his hand. Then disease departed from mankind, and the earth once again found peace. Part 2. And it came to pass that before another 1,200 years had passed, mankind once again multiplied upon the earth, and the land was filled with a multitude of people. The noise of humanity became great, like the roaring of a wild bull, and their clamor rose from the earth to the heavens. Once again Enlil, lord of the earth, was troubled, for he found no rest by day or by night because of the cries of mankind. So he assembled the council of the gods and called out to his sons, saying, "Behold, the noise of mankind troubles me once more. Their numbers have not diminished after the former calamities, but have increased even further. Their clamor weighs heavily upon me, and sleep has departed from my eyes. Therefore let us take away their sustenance and deliver the land over to famine. Let the heavens be shut, and let no rain fall upon the fields. Let Anu and Adad guard the heights of heaven, and hold back the showers and the rains. Let gods Nana and Nergal watch over the middle earth, and let Enki keep the barriers of the sea, the gates of the great ocean, and the springs of its waters, so that they may not pour forth upon the land. Let the scorching wind go forth and dry up the soil, and if clouds gather, let them yield no rain. Let the fields diminish their harvests. Let the black farmlands become white with salt, and let the broad cultivated plains produce nothing but salt flats. Let Nisaba, lady of grain, turn away her face, and let the womb of the earth rise against mankind. Let no grasses spring forth, and let no grain take root. Let pestilence be sent among the people, and let weakness and wasting increase. Let the wombs of women be closed, and let no children be born. Let rejoicing cease among mankind, and let gladness vanish from their dwellings. And let humanity be destroyed by hunger and deprivation, until their numbers are diminished upon the earth." And the great Anunnaki did as Enlil had commanded them. They took away mankind's sustenance and delivered the land over to famine. Adad shut up his rains, and no showers fell from the heavens. Below, the underground waters were sealed off, and no irrigation rose from the depths. The fields yielded ever smaller harvests, the black farmlands turned white with salt, and the broad cultivated plains produced nothing but barren salt flats. The womb of the earth rose against mankind. No grass sprang forth, and no grain took root. Pestilence was sent among the people, and children ceased to be born. And after the first year, the people suffered greatly from hunger. After the second year, they suffered greatly from thirst. After the third year, famine had so disfigured their faces that no man could be recognized by his appearance. After the fourth year, their long legs had become short, and their broad shoulders had grown narrow. They walked through the streets bent over and without strength. After the fifth year, a daughter stood watch over her mother at the gate, yet the mother would not open the door to her daughter. The daughter watched the measure of bread belonging to her mother, and the mother watched the measure of bread belonging to her daughter, for each feared the other. After the sixth year, they ate their own daughters, and they consumed their own sons for food. Families rose up against one another and destroyed one another, and the darkness of death covered their faces, and scarcely did the breath of life remain within them. But Atra-Ḥasīs, the wisest of mankind, turned his heart toward the Lord Enki, his god, and sought guidance from him. So he went to the gates of Enki, upon the bank of the river, and he made his bed. And there he cried out to his god. He laid offerings at his feet, and wept bitterly every day. At the break of dawn, he presented sacrifices, offered up prayers, and never ceased calling upon his Lord. He waited for a sign in his dreams, and sought an answer in the visions of the night. Every day he came to the temple of his God. Before the temple he sat and wept. Before the altar he placed his offerings, and having set them down, remained seated, pouring out his tears. And when the river was silent, the night still, and morning was drawing near, he lifted his eyes toward the flowing waters and cried out once more to Enki, saying, "May the current carry me away, and may the river bear me along. May it bring me before the face of my God, before the face of Enki. Oh, if only I could behold Enki in a dream. If only a vision would come to me in the night, and he would reveal his will to me." For a long time Atra-Ḥasīs came to the flowing waters. Upon the bank of the river he called upon Enki day and night, for his soul yearned for the Abzu, the great abyss of waters. And Enki heard his prayers. Then he said to his servants Lachmu and Lachamu, "The man who weeps upon my shores and ceaselessly lifts up his supplications to me, take him now and bring him into my presence. Go and fulfill my command." So Lachmu and Lachamu went and carried out the command of their lord. They took Atra-Ḥasīs and brought him before the face of Enki. Then Enki said to Atra-Ḥasīs, "Atra-Ḥasīs, heed my words. Keep my counsel within your heart and do not neglect it. Gather the elders before your house and speak to them in this manner. Let messengers be sent forth, and let them proclaim throughout the whole land with a mighty voice. You have not honored your gods, nor have you praised your goddesses with your prayers. Therefore famine and calamity have overtaken you. Now seek out the gates of Adad. Set before them baked loaves of bread, and offer sesame flour as a sacrifice. Perhaps the heart of Adad will be softened, and he will withhold his hand. Then, at dawn, he will send down life-giving dew, and by night the rains will fall unseen. And in the fields, as though by a hidden hand, grain will begin to spring forth."
And Atra-Ḥasīs did everything just as Enki had commanded him. A temple of Adad was erected in the city, and messengers were sent throughout the land. And they proclaimed with a loud voice, "We have not honored our gods, nor have we praised our goddesses in our prayers." Then the people sought out the gates of Adad, and before them they set baked loaves of bread and offered sacrifices of finely ground sesame meal. And Adad's heart was softened at the sight of their gifts, and he restrained his hand. At dawn he sent down life-giving dew. By night rain swept across the land, and in the fields, hidden from the eyes of men, grain began to sprout. Abundance returned to the land, and famine withdrew from mankind. Once again, the people brought offerings to their gods. The fragrant aroma of the sacrifices rose to the heavens, and the great gods gathered around the offering, as bees gather around sweetness. But when Enlil saw that mankind had revived and multiplied once more, his spirit was troubled, and he burned with anger.
And Enlil flared with anger at the gods and said, "We, all the great Anunnaki, unanimously decreed and together determined the fate of mankind. Anu and Adad guard the heavens. I guard the earth, the middle realm. But Enki, wherever he goes, everywhere lightens the burden of men and grants them relief. He has again permitted the prosperity of the human race and granted men a place under the sun." And Enlil turned to his advisor Nusku, saying, "Let all the gods be summoned to me. Let them stand before my face in council." And Nusku gathered the gods, and they stood before Enlil. Then the warrior Enlil said to them, "We, all the great Anunnaki, unanimously decided to diminish the number of men. But you, Enki, wherever you step, you lighten their lot. You have again returned abundance to them and allowed them to prosper upon the earth." And Enki answered, "You yourself commanded that Anu and Adad guard the heavens, and Nanna and Nergal the earth. To me were entrusted the bolts of the waters, the gates of the ocean, and the depths of the Abzu. But myriads of fish and sea creatures slipped from my authority. I gathered them, but they scattered again. They destroyed half the bolts of the waters.
Then I punished the guilty, put the guardians of the sea to death, and restored order in the abyss." But Enlil did not accept Enki's justification and said, "It was not the fish that destroyed the decree of the gods, and it was not the sea that violated our design. Someone has opened the way of salvation for humanity. Adad sent his rains again, and the fields were nourished with moisture. Clouds covered the skies, and the earth brought forth its fruit. But this was not by our will." And a murmur arose among the assembly of the gods, for they did not accept the accusations brought against Enki. After that, Enlil spoke again. "In our council, we unanimously decided to diminish the number of humans, but you, Enki, granted them relief and permitted the prosperity of the human race." And wise Enki answered, saying, "O warrior Enlil, your fury is great, but it was not I who violated the decision of the great gods. Life itself sought life on earth, and the earth did not wish to remain empty." Then Mami, mother of the gods, rose and said to the great gods, "Why do you wish to destroy the creation of my hands? Not for destruction did I create man, but that he might carry your baskets and bear the yoke which the gods once bore. You have received the service of man, by the labor of his hands you are satisfied. But if the human race should vanish, your sanctuaries will become empty, libations will cease, and there will be none to bring you sacrifices. You establish destinies, so let destiny reward each according to his deeds. Let us not destroy everyone without remainder." And hearing the words of the mistress, the gods felt ashamed. But Enlil spoke again and said, "Your words are just, Mother Goddess. However, I am the Lord of the earth, and it is for me to decide its fate. The number of humans has multiplied excessively, and their clamor denies me rest. Another means must be found. We shall send the great flood upon them, and let the seed of humanity be exterminated, so that we may begin all over again without humans. If the council agrees with my word, let Shulat and Hanish go before the storm. Let Erigel pull out the poles of the heavenly gates. Let Ninurta tear down the dams, and let no one violate the decision of the council. And let us bind Enki with a common oath, so that he does not reveal our design to humans." Then Enki turned to his brothers and said, "Why do you wish to bind me with an oath? Shall I not stretch out my hand to my people? The flood of which you speak, what is it? Who is capable of birthing such a great calamity? Can anyone give birth to a flood? But if this is your will, Enlil, for you are the Lord of the earth and its master, then let it be according to your word. Let the gods be chosen for this task. Let Shulat and Hanish go in front. Let Erigel pull out the poles, and let Ninurta tear down the dams." And so the great gods decided in council, and they decreed that the world be given over to destruction. An evil deed Enlil prepared for humanity. And he said before the entire assembly, "Let us take an oath regarding the great flood and not violate it." And Anu swore first, then Enlil swore, and with him his sons. And all the great gods sealed their decision with an oath. Part 3. And Atra-Ḥasīs bowed to the ground and prostrated himself before his lord. He opened his mouth and said, "Lord Enki, I sense your approach. My heart recognizes your footsteps. Reveal a sign to me in a dream, that I may understand the meaning of your words and not deviate from the path you shall show me." And Enki opened his mouth and answered his servant, "You ask, what is known to me? Listen then to the message I now proclaim to you, and keep it within your heart. For Enlil, in the assembly of the gods, has decreed to bring a great flood and wipe from the face of the earth all that lives. Therefore, heed my words. O wall, listen. Reed hut, pay attention. Destroy your house and build an ark. Abandon wealth and save your life. Disregard property so that you may preserve the breath of life. The ark that you build must have a length equal to its width. Let it be like the great Apsu, so that the waters of the flood cannot penetrate it. Let it rise above the turbulent waters, and preserve within it the seed of all living things. Name it Life-Saver. Cover it with a roof, like the deep of the Absu, so that the light of the sun cannot penetrate inside. Let it be sealed from above and below, and let all its joints be strong. Make its structure sturdy, and coat it thickly with pitch inside and out, so that the waters may not overcome it. And when the appointed time arrives, which I shall reveal to you, enter the ark and close the doors behind you. Take with you the grain of the earth and all the possessions you have. Take your wife, your sons, and all your household. Take your kin, your workers, and your craftsmen. And bring every seed of life into the ark, cattle of the steppe, wild beasts, birds of the heavens, and animals that crawl upon the earth. I myself will bring them to your gates, and they shall enter unto you to preserve their lives in the days of wrath. And I shall send upon the earth a downpour, and the springs of the great deep shall burst forth. Then all that lives shall vanish from the face of the earth, but you shall preserve your life and the lives of those who are with you in the ark. Having heard the words of his lord, Atrahasis was filled with fear, and turning to Enki said, "My lord, I have never built such a thing before. Draw the image of the ark for me on the ground, that I may see how it ought to be." And Enki drew the design of the ark on the ground, and showed his servant its dimensions and its construction. Seeing this, Atrahasis prostrated himself before his lord and said, "Indeed, my lord, all that you have commanded I shall fulfill." And Enki revealed the time of execution, and announced that the flood would last for 7 days. And Atrahasis heeded his words. After that, he gathered the elders of the city before his house, and said to them, "My God is not in agreement with your God. Enki and Enlil are at enmity with each other. Enlil is casting me out of this city, for I serve Enki and worship him. I can no longer live among you, and I can no longer walk upon the lands of Enlil. For what mortal is capable of arguing with the gods? Therefore, I shall go down to the borders of the Lord of the Waters, and settle in the depths of the mighty Apsu, where my master Enki dwells. But first I must build a vessel to reach my dwelling in the abysses of the Abzu." And hearing this, the elders heeded the words of Atrahasis, and work began to boil among the people. The carpenter came with his axe, the stonemason brought his stone, the craftsmen gathered together, and each brought what he had. Even small children carried pitch, and the poor brought their modest contributions. Carpenters cut timber for the structure. Masters placed the ribs and strengthened the beams. Day and night the people labored and did not cease their work. On the 5th day, the frame of the ark was outlined, and on the 7th day they completed its construction. And Atrahasis loaded onto the ship everything he had. All his silver and his gold, all the possessions of his house, he brought into the ark. And he took with him light animals and plump cattle, fat and well-fed animals he brought on board. He took with him the birds of the heavens, and domestic cattle, and beasts of the field. Creatures of the steppe and every living being that Enki brought to him, he led into the ark to preserve the seed of life on earth. And when everything was prepared, Atrahasis awaited the appointed time that his lord Enki had revealed to him. And Atrahasis summoned the people of his house for a farewell feast. And he brought aboard his kin, his family, and all who belonged to his house. And they ate delicacies, and drank beverages, and rejoiced at the meal. But Atrahasis did not share in their merriment. He walked back and forth upon his ark, and found no peace. He could neither sit nor lie down, for his heart was filled with sorrow. Fear and anxiety took hold of him, and his soul was troubled. And when the day began to change its face, Adat thundered in a black cloud. Then a great terror seized Atrahasis, for he saw that the appointed time had arrived. And he summoned his household and brought them into the ark. The beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens entered with him, and every living creature that was destined for preservation. And as soon as he heard the roar of the approaching storm, he took pitch and sealed all the openings of the ark. And when its entrances were shut, Adad thundered in the black cloud, and the winds, welcoming his procession, raised a great howl. And the rope holding the vessel snapped, and the ark was torn from the earth. The wind rose and carried the storm. Adad raced on his winds as if on swift mules, on the east wind, on the west, on the north, and on the south. Hurricanes and whirlwinds marched before him, and storms followed in his footsteps. A fierce whirlwind rose to meet the winds, the south wind rushed upward, and the west wind trumpeted alongside it. Like the chariot of the gods, the hurricane rushed, crushing everything in its path, striking and destroying. Ninurta went and broke down the dams. Erragal tore out the anchors and the pillars of the foundations of the earth. Anzu spread his talons and tore the heavens asunder, and the earth split like a clay vessel. Then the waters rose from the depths, and the flood came forth upon the surface of the earth. And its power passed over the people like an army, annihilating everything living. One man could not see another, and people did not recognize one another amidst the destruction. Like a wild bull, the flood raged. Like a roaring donkey, its wind howled. The light of heaven dimmed, and darkness covered the earth, and there remained no place where a man might hide from the wrath of the waters.
And Anu heard the calamity of the flood, and the roar of the waters made the gods shudder. Even Enki was troubled in his spirit when he saw that the sons of men were cast down before the face of destruction. Nintu, the great mistress, the mother of men, trembled, and her lips quivered with grief. But the Anunnaki, the great gods, sat silent, tormented by hunger and thirst, for there was no longer any man to bring them sacrifices and libations. And, looking upon them, the goddess Mami, the midwife of the gods, the wise foremother, wept, saying, "May that day fade and may it return to darkness. How could I, together with the gods, agree in council to the ruin of the world? Has Enlil satiated himself with his cruel command? Like a Tirur, he has raised an abomination and betrayed creation to annihilation. Now I hear the cries of those whom I myself gave birth to. Like flies, they swarm over the waters, my children, born of me. And I remain as if in a house of mourning, and my cries resound amidst the void. How can I ascend to the heavens now? How can I return to the house of my treasures? Where was Anu, and where was his wisdom, when his sons heeded these words? Who, without thinking of the consequences, decided to bring the flood and consigned men to extermination? Thus wept Nintu, and her cries did not cease. And she said, "What has become of the earth? The sea has gone beyond its bounds and swallowed everything. Like dragonflies covering the surface of the water, so human bodies have covered the rivers. Like a light boat, the flood overturned the earth. Like a small vessel in the steppe, it set it upside down. I look upon this and I weep. I have finished my lamentation over my children." Thus wept Nintu, comforting her grieving heart. Thus she groaned and uttered cries. And the gods, together with her, mourned the earth. Grief sated them more than food, and they thirsted for beer, but there was no one to prepare it for them. When Nintu sat in tears, and the gods sat beside her, they huddled together, like sheep at a trough. From thirst their mouths were parched, and from hunger they grew weak. 7 days and 7 nights raged the flood, the hurricane and the downpour. 7 days and 7 nights the winds did not cease, and the waters did not return to their bounds. And there, where the flood passed, like a warrior in battle, everything was destroyed. The earth turned into clay, and no breath of life remained upon it. On the 8th day, the storm weakened, and the flood, which had fought like an army, subsided. The sea calmed, the hurricane fell silent, and the rain ceased to pour from the heavens. Then Atrahasis opened the window of the ark, and light fell upon his face. He looked out at the surface of the waters, and behold, silence had reigned. But all of humanity had turned to clay. Like logs, the bodies of men floated upon the waters, and like reeds, they were carried by the current. And tears flowed down the face of Atrahasis. He sat down and wept bitterly for the perished human race. Wherever he turned his gaze, he saw nothing but the sea. Neither field, nor city, nor human dwelling could be seen. Only the peak of one mountain rose above the waters, and the ark came to rest upon its summit. For 7 days the ark rested on the mountain, not moving from its place. And on the 8th day, Atrahasis opened the doors of the ark. He released a bird, but the bird returned, for it found no place to rest its feet. Then he released another bird, but it too returned to him. After that he released a third bird, and it did not return. Then Atrahasis understood that the waters had retreated from the earth. He opened all the latches of the ark and released the animals to the 4 corners of the earth. The beasts dispersed across the land, each according to its kind, and the birds rose into the heavens and scattered through the air. Then Atrahasis descended to the earth. He erected an altar on the mountain peak, and with his own hands he piled the stones for it. He laid clean wood beneath the altar and prepared a burnt offering. To the 4 corners of the earth he offered the sacrifice and lit fragrant incense. He prepared food and set it before the gods, and the gods smelled the sweet aroma of the sacrifice. And they gathered around the offering like bees around sweetness. When the gods had tasted of the sacrifice and were satisfied by its sweet savor, Nintu rose and stood in the midst of the assembly of the gods. And she said, "Where was Anu, and where was his wisdom? How did Enlil resolve upon such a deed? Without reflection, you brought the flood and consigned mankind to destruction. You resolved upon the ruin of the world, and now your radiant faces have dimmed because of what you have done." And Nintu approached the amulet in the shape of a fly, which Anu had once fashioned, and which she wore for her own delight. Lifting it before the gods, she said, "Let this amulet be a sign of my sorrow and a testament to my fate. May the memory of the perished not be hidden from me, and may I never forget the days of calamity. Verily, those dark days shall return no more. May this fly of dark blue stone remain upon my neck for all my days, so that I may eternally remember my lost children." And the warrior Enlil saw that the gods had gathered around the ark, and that some of the people had escaped destruction. And he was filled with great wrath. And Enlil said, "All of us, the great Anunnaki, swore together as one. How then has a living soul survived? How has a human escaped amidst the destruction?" Then Anu opened his mouth and said to Enlil, "Who other than Enki could have done this? I, for one, did not disclose the council's decision." Then Enki opened his mouth and said to the great gods, "Verily, it was I who did this deed, for I am responsible for the preservation of life. But where was your wisdom, O gods, when, without reflection, you decided to bring the flood? Has your heart grown calm now, Enlil? Has your fury abated? Let the guilty one alone bear his punishment, rather than the whole of the human race perishing. Let him who sinned answer for his sin, and let him who transgressed the law accept his penalty. May the assembly of the gods no longer resolve to destroy all of humanity at once." Then the great gods gathered for a council, and for a long time they held deliberations among themselves. Once again the fates of men were determined, and limits of life were set for mortals. Thus the gods established a new order on the earth, and Anu opened his mouth and said to Prince Enki,
summon the mother goddess Nintu, and together take counsel regarding the fate of the human race. And Enki opened his mouth and said to the mother goddess Nintu, "You, mother goddess, who determines fates, establish from now on a different order for men. Let there be among women those who give birth and those who do not. Let some be barren and others dedicated to the gods. For the priestesses, the Ugbabu, Igitsitu, and Entu, let there be a prohibition against bearing children. Let the demon Pashitu live among men and snatch infants from the womb, so that the number of people does not exceed the measure." And so the great gods determined the fates of mortals and set limits for the human race. Henceforth, the earth will not be excessively filled with people, and the clamor of humanity will no longer be unbearable. Such is the tale of how the gods gathered in council, how they decreed the great flood, and how man was preserved amidst the destruction. I have told of how the great gods deliberated among themselves, and how life was saved amidst the ruin. O counselor of the great gods, by your command this song was created. To your glory this tale was composed. May the Igigi hear it, and may they preserve the memory of it for all generations. I, for my part, have told men of the flood. Let him who hears, hear, and let him who remembers, keep it in his heart.
Commentary. The epic recounts the creation of humans by the gods, the rebellion of the minor gods due to the burden of hard labor, a series of calamities sent by the gods, and finally, a great flood survived by the hero Atra-Ḥasīs. This narrative is considered one of the oldest known accounts of the universal flood and has had a notable influence on later Mesopotamian and biblical traditions. The myth of Atra-Ḥasīs is one of the most important literary works of ancient Mesopotamia. It was recorded in the Akkadian language using cuneiform script and has reached us in several versions. The most complete text of the epic was found in the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in the ancient city of Nineveh, located in present-day Iraq. Excavations of the library were conducted by British archaeologists beginning in 1849. Austen Henry Layard and later Hormuzd Rassam played the leading roles in the discovery. However, individual fragments of the epic were also discovered in other ancient Mesopotamian cities, such as Sippar and Nippur. The oldest known complete tablet was written around 1646 to 1626 BCE during the time of the Babylonian king Amisaduqa, the great-grandson of the famous Hammurabi. The name of the scribe, Kuaya, has been preserved on one of the tablets. Thanks to this, we know that he was the one who transcribed this particular copy of the text. However, the myth itself is significantly older. Most researchers believe that its original version was created as early as the 18th to 17th centuries BCE, and individual plots date back to even earlier Sumerian traditions from the 3rd millennium BCE. The first fragments of the text were published in the second half of the 19th century, but for a long time, the epic remained poorly understood due to the damaged state of the tablets. A complete scholarly edition and translation were prepared by the British Assyriologist Wilfred George Lambert in collaboration with Alan Millard and published in 1969 under the title Atra-Ḥasīs, the Babylonian Story of the Flood. This publication became the basis for most modern translations.